Time magazine called him the unsung hero behind the internet. CNN called him a father of the internet. President Bill Clinton called him one of the great minds of the information age. He has been voted history's greatest scientist of African descent. He is Philip Emeagwali. He's coming to Trinidad and Tobago to launch the 2008 Kwame Ture lecture series on Sunday, June 8th at the JFK Auditorium, New St. Augustine, 5 p.m. The Emancipation Support Committee invites you to come and hear this inspirational mind adjust the theme, crossing new frontiers to conquer today's challenges. This lecture is one you cannot afford to miss. Admission is free, so be there on Sunday, June 8th, 5 p.m. at the JFK Auditorium, New St. Augustine.
The June 14, 1976 issue of Computer World magazine reported on a special session on parallel processing that occurred at the National Computer Conference. At that conference session, respected leaders of thought in supercomputing mocked parallel processing research as a quote-unquote waste of time. That 4-day National Computer Conference was held in New York City from June 7 to June 10, 1976. The Computer World magazine reported that a panelist of supercomputer experts at that National Computer Conference were of the opinion that, I quote, "those machines often turn out to be large and clumsy, and several of the large parallel processing designs since then have failed. Now we are moving into the modern era," end of quote. Supercomputer scientists were reading articles such as the one in the June 14, 1976 issue of the Computer World magazine that was titled, quote, "Research in Parallel Processing, questioned as waste of time," unquote. In the 1970s and 80s, the Computer World magazine was as eagerly read and was as authoritative as Ebony magazine was in the African American community. The reason parallel processing was rejected and mocked was that in the 1970s, punch card computer programming of a general circulation model was by itself a grand challenge. In the 1970s, it was easier to travel to the moon than to program a massively parallel processing supercomputer. My two central questions were, first, how do I email and command each of my 65,536 commodity processors? Or how do I command as many identical computers that define a new internet? And how do I command those processors to execute an ensemble of 65,536 general circulation models? And how do I command them to solve the as many initial boundary value problems? And how do I command them to solve those problems with a one-to-one correspondence between the processors and the as many models? And how do I command them to solve those problems simultaneously or in parallel? And second, how do I instruct those 65,536 processors, and how do I instruct them to email the numerical answers to the initial boundary value problems and to email them synchronously or in parallel? Asking such parallel processing questions seemed ludicrous to the 25,000 supercomputer scientists of the 1970s and 80s. In those 2 decades, parallel processing was an unproven technology. Massively parallel processing demanded my intimate, explicit, and exact knowledge of the positions of each of all of my 64 binary thousand processors. In totality, the topological positions of my processors outlined and defined the specific massively parallel supercomputer that I programmed. The configuration that had 65,536 processors made the news headlines in 1989. For me, Philip Emeagwali, and as a lone wolf massively parallel supercomputer scientists, communicating and computing and doing both across a new internet, demanded that I know the one binary million zeros and ones that redefined that internet as the supercomputer hopeful. I defined that new supercomputer not as a massively parallel processing machine per se, but as a new internet de facto. I visualized my new internet as a global network of 64 binary thousand commodity processors that were identical to each other and that were equal distances afar and apart from each other, or as a global network of as many identical computers. That's one cohesive supercomputer. The modern supercomputer of today existed in the terra incognita of that internet technology, which was the unknown world of supercomputing of the 1970s and 80s.
Insightful and brilliant lecture.